I'm very pleased to introduce Frauke Schmidt from EUWID, who's going to take a look at the pulp and paper market and give us a pulp and paper update. So, thank you.
Thank you, Tim. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Tim already introduced me. EUWID is a magazine, news magazine for the pulp and paper industry in Europe. And we also do price researches for Germany, France, Italy, Poland, and the UK. Among the paper grades is containerboard. So this is what I would like to concentrate on, the containerboard market development. And for an example, I've chosen the Italian market for two reasons. Firstly, the Italian market is by far the most volatile of the markets we're observing. And the data for February has already been there last week, whereas the UK and Germany are only coming on stream or coming online this week. I will mainly concentrate on testliner 3. I've only just put in kraftliner for comparison reasons. I've decided to also put in 2019, which is referred to as the last normal year, but if you can see, it was a year with really a downward trend in prices, mainly due to the downward development of the European industry, but also extremely low recovered fiber prices. So I remember in 2019, mixed paper was in negative territory for some months. So then in February, March, we had the global pandemic come upon us. And after the first ups and downs, panic-driven movements, prices hit their all-time low in this graph in the third quarter of 2020. And in Italy, prices for testliner 3 were below 300 euros. But from them, we saw an unprecedented increase in prices, driven by the lockdowns, the e-commerce, stocking up, more price increases, more supply restrictions, and so on. So in Italy, prices went up by a tremendous 140%. In the other markets, it wasn't so big because the markets are less volatile and the prices are higher. So the increase seems to be lower, but we still saw tremendous price increases everywhere. Then the curve was starting to flatten toward the end of 2021. We had vaccines, we were waiting for economies opening up, hoping for some normalization. When the start of the war in Europe sent shockwaves through the world and also through markets, particularly the energy markets. And they led to another surge of panic on the paper side. For example, there are some mills that were only buying their energy on the spot markets, so they had to stop production because it was no longer economically viable to continue production. Other mills did what my colleague called production without demand, so they were afraid of having blackouts later on or being cut off their energy supply, so they were producing a little extra to already very high stocks. And this is what some customers also did. So at the end of this, we had another price increase just from 1 month to the next, from March to April, of 12 to 15%. And the highest stocks we've ever seen. Highest prices, highest stocks. However, then the market changed very quickly because, of course, the high costs, the inflation also reached the demand. So very many people stopped spending, were afraid of their next gas bill. Then, of course, people, or the paper mills and the converters realized demand was coming down, so they started to draw from those high stocks, which depressed demand even more. And over the last year, we've seen that paper mills took downtime of about 1.5 to 2 million tons of containerboard without stocks really coming down. So these are the current overcapacities giving the very, very low demand. And what is more, costs started to come down as well for energy, for recovered fiber, for logistics, for example, sea containers, and so on. So we have seen since the second quarter of last year, we have seen an unprecedented price drop, and we are still in this downward spiral. And of course, the million-dollar question that I keep asking my experts and that my experts keep asking me is, How long will this spiral continue? Where will prices bottom out? So I can only give you some glimpses in the crystal ball or some guesses, because nobody really knows. But if we have a look at the market fundamentals that led to the price decreases, they are still there. We still have a lower demand. We still have costs coming down. We still have overcapacities. We even have a growth in paper production capacities. So watch out for those two. Those two mills will be starting production next month. I mean, it takes some time until they really produce significant amounts of paper, but of course they have a psychological impact. Or for example, in this second quarter of 2024, the modern carton mill in Schotten will start production as well, and there's a lot more capacity coming on stream to the market. However, there are also some factors that are pointing in the other direction. For example, economies have fared a little bit better despite all the crisis, so I think the UK was able to avoid a recession last quarter. There were no blackouts or brownouts in Germany or in Italy. We don't really expect them. Then we see there are strikes everywhere in Europe right now. This is not good for inflation, but maybe some of the people with less money will be able to spend more or have more confidence, so this might have an impact on packaging. Then we have seen that paper mills have been very good at reacting to the overcapacities, so mills are still taking downtime, or we're seeing that some of the European paper is being shipped to deep sea markets to relieve the European market. And the costs are coming down, but they are still way above the pre-crisis levels. For example, if you look at the TTF stock exchange for gas in Holland, in a 3-month comparison, that looks good. In a 3-year comparison, it's a catastrophe. So I can only sum up what some experts told us. So many people say there will probably only be an improvement in the second half of the year. As I said, prices will not come down to pre-crisis levels. This is actually a mistake. These 400 euros only apply to Italy, not to the rest of Europe, and certainly not to the UK. But if you see it here, Italy, they're nearly here. So maybe it's not so far off if you just take into account that Italy is the forerunner market, reacting more quickly and more drastically. So Italy is not so far from this 400 euro ton per ton floor. And however, even if there's improvement in the second half of the year, the environment will remain to be very challenging. Someone was talking about a bloodbath. That was again for Italy, where you have also very many small non-integrated paper mills. So we might see a few companies not being able to survive in this very difficult environment. And on the longer term, on medium term, I've just put on some things that some people told us when we're talking with them, experts. It's not looking really good. Volatility will probably stay with us. And I just want to point out the plans for the EU packaging regulations. I don't know whether you're aware of this, but the operative word of this proposal being reuse economy. And this is also going to affect cardboard boxes for transit. All the relevant industry associations have already reacted and criticized it. Maybe it's also a good thing to discuss here how useful it is to replace a perfectly well-working recycling solution with a reuse solution. But I don't know what the planning horizon for the EU is to really make a decision on it, but it would certainly have an impact on packaging requirements in the midterm future. Thank you very much for your attention. See you later on.